Welcome to O.P.O.P, the podcast, Operation Protect Our Peace.
I'm Stacey.
I'm Sarah.
Tune into O.P.O.P as we expose all the hard stuff to get to the sweet stuff.
You'll get the truth, plot twists, and the pivots you need to protect your peace.
Life hits hard,
but with God, O.P.O.P hits harder.
Hey, Joy Stealers.
We're coming for you. Hi, everyone. Welcome to O.P.O.P, the podcast, Operation Protect Our Peace with Stacey and Sarah. And today is episode 21, where Stacey's going to be doing the second part of our 3-part series of grace, where she gets to share her life application of how she practices grace with herself and with others. And we're just going to dive on in. You ready?
It's getting real.
Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Okay, I wasn't a singer, I'm a podcaster. All right, question 1. Here we go.
But we were dancing.
Yes, this is true.
All right.
Stacey, are you ready? When was the first time in your life that you had the aha moment, realizing you needed to give yourself grace, even after you had already learned the concept of grace growing up?
Love that question because I grew up in church. I know the concept of grace. I've known it from a very young age. But the aha moment for me where I really realized, oh, wow, I needed to give myself grace was honestly a friend who helped me understand and remember the path of grace. It's those practical moments when you realize, oh, I know this principle. I know what to say. I even know what to do. But doing them and saying that are very different. And I realized I was not doing a very good job back then at giving myself grace. I was very hard on myself looking back. I cared a lot what people thought, and I guess just a people pleaser more so. So I guess that does make you care what people think, but you just want them to be happy. But I was forgetting that the hard, harsh things that I was bringing on myself, God was not thinking of me, what I was thinking of me. So my friend Doug and I had very parallel stories in walking through divorce. And it was the last thing we wanted, so we aligned there. It's not what we hoped for. We grieved it, and initially both felt like a complete failure because we tried so hard. We didn't want to give up that dream of getting married, staying married forever, and that being our story. And so he was a few steps ahead of me. It was about a year ahead of me that it's happened to him. And I did not expect to ever be in that position. And he was also ahead of me in life, about 20 years older. So looking back now, I see that God gave me a real life person to watch and learn from. And he started walking through grace to himself before me and learning that he really needed that. And he hadn't really given himself that. And when I found myself in the same really tough situation, I actually got to watch him do it gracefully, and he walked it just step by step, walked it literally, and not big chunks at a time. And that's why God says, my grace is sufficient for today. It's just what we need for now. And these, again, are easy things to say, but when you find yourself in a really tough spot, it's really important to remember that you can't go forward and think, what is this going to look like in 3 months? You can't do that. It's just got to be for today. So he poured into me. And looking back, I realized why it was such an aha moment, because we made a promise to each other to be nice to Doug or to be nice to Stacey. And it would be a simple reminder that we did. And when we noticed each other having a hard time, and we would just say, are you being nice to Doug? Mm-hmm. Are you being nice to Stacey? And it was that gentle way to say, I know you're struggling right now and you're not being very easy on yourself. So maybe just ask that and be a little nice. Ease up. Hold up. So looking back, I also realized in answering this question that we've been practicing O.P.O.P, Operation Protect Our Peace, for 16 years now. And this is why you and I, Sarah, feel it is our purpose to pay it forward and pass it along now in this podcast and in our personal lives, because there are people looking back along the way who poured into us and helped us remember to give ourselves grace and helped us learn it so we could give it better. And so now we feel very strongly about paying it forward, because we also know You might be hearing this in that you might not have that friend in your corner. You might feel super lonely right now. And if that is you, we are offering us, this podcast, as the same support to you through us and our friends all over the world that, because if without that reminder, I might have gone down a really long, hard path of condemnation and all that comes with that you've heard in the previous episodes, because that's a slippery slope, an easy slope to go down. But someone with great faith leaned into me with encouragement and has never stopped to this day. So now I feel really strongly to pay that forward. And I leaned into that because I felt what an impact it made on me, that if he could walk through this horrible path, choosing healthy things, giving himself grace, resting the burdens to God instead of carrying them, and giving himself grace, then maybe I could too. And that's what I want to encourage our listeners to say, that if you feel this very strongly and it resonates, that maybe you can too. And it worked for me. I gained strength back and I was easier on myself. And I was able to live fully in who God created me to be, despite the pain and despite the hardships, instead of letting my spirit be crushed or my identity be robbed because of what I went through or defined by divorce. It's easy to go down that slope of saying those things to yourself that are, along the crappiness that comes from divorce. It also helped me realize how hard I was being on myself, because I had a dear friend who knew me well enough to know and be able to practically see and look at me and say, hey, you need to be a little easier on yourself. I can see how hard you're being on yourself. And when you have, yes, of course, God and his word, those are amazing gifts to have in our lives to remind us. But sometimes we're at a low that even picking up the word, we're not even strong enough to do. Or maybe we're in a stage of grief that we're not at our best, and someone speaking life into us, we're maybe able to hear a little clearer from that. And that is what happened to me. So to me, that was God's grace in action right there to provide an easier path. Not that it is easy, but sometimes he puts people close to you so that they can speak into your life and pull you back to the path of grace. And so Ephesians 4:32 says, be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other just as Christ forgave you. And John 15:13, greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. And Psalm 27:9, sweet friendships refresh the soul and awaken our hearts with joy, for good friends are like the anointing oil that yields the fragrant incense of God's presence. And I have witnessed this in my life, that so many people have done this for me, family and friends. And this was one example that I experienced grace to myself through a person.
I love that. Well, speaking of through a person, friends, and community, which one's harder for you? Being gracious on yourself or to others?
Ooh, good question. Well, it depends on the situation, because some of the worst ways I've been treated, it took me a good while to feel like giving any type of grace. But something that really helped was this exercise that I was given in a counseling session. It was on forgiveness, which is basically another way of saying grace. And it proved to be more difficult for me to forgive myself than it was to forgive others. The exercise was take 1 hour and pray alone. Do it on your own time. I'm not asking you to do it right this second. Like, create a safe space in a quiet space and just literally ask God to show you, is there anyone I need to forgive? And do it first for yourself, and then do it for, is there any other people I need to forgive? Are there any other circumstances, any other words that I took with me that don't need to be in my life? And I'm talking all the way back to childhood. And I can honestly say, before this, I never specifically did this exercise. After an hour, I put on music and I really leaned in. I had a journal and stuff just started flowing to my mind. when I asked for it. And I was just writing. And after the hour, I set an alarm, the hour was up. I had 4 pages in my journal of things and people and circumstances I needed to forgive and let go to others. I had 6 pages for me. And it was stuff that I would have answered you this question, giving grace to others is way easier, I would have said that but really giving grace to myself turned out to be, people pleaser, right? So I'm going to put myself down the way a little bit and just suppress stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that right there is very scary, because unprocessed emotion is typically what trips us up. Yeah. And then stuff tips you over, and you've suppressed stuff for so long, you'll figure out whether you're an imploder or an exploder. You'll figure it out.
Yeah. But
because the real thing is, you're the only one who knows what you really think. You're the only one who knows what you really feel. You and God. I mean, you guys, that's the only two in the world that can say, I know what you're really feeling. I know how you really treat yourself. I know what you really think about yourself. I know how hard you are on yourself. And you're much quicker to forgive others than you are to forgive yourself. Why?
Yeah, that's so true.
And I realized in that moment. So one of the things about that, though, that I realized about forgiveness that is really, really important, it's a small twist, but it's an important perspective shift, is that forgiveness and how God aligns to forgive us. I heard this principle also my whole life, that when we make a mistake, we can turn and ask forgiveness, make a change. He forgives us, boom, forgotten. But then when it comes to us, he asks us to forgive as well. Well, I always pictured it like, you screw me over, and now I need to forgive you.
Mm-hmm.
I pictured it as a yes, heart posture, yes, verbal maybe, and an action, right? Like a choice. But I was picturing it like, I have the power to forgive you or anyone on this earth. And that is actually a twist that I was getting wrong, because all that does is put a deep burden on us. So not only did somebody hurt us deeply, now we just took on the burden that now I need to forgive you, and I have to get ready for that.
Gosh.
So now
that load.
Yeah, that load. And I had that wrong, because here's the facts. Jesus died on the cross to forgive everyone of our sin. So think of the person who's done you the dirtiest in this life, or people, or who you've done dirty, that you needed forgiveness, that I needed forgiveness. Jesus died for all of those forever, wiped clean. I was thinking, okay, fine. Now that I'm ready, now I forgive you. I wipe your slate clean. I don't have the power. You don't have the power to do that, right? So that I hope helps some people realize it is much simpler than that. I'm not saying forgiving is easy. I'm saying it's simpler. All we have to do is align with what has already been done. All he's saying is just turn your heart enough to say, okay, I align, and I know that you give to me and to that person and to that person and to all of us the same. Mm-hmm. So that was very powerful. But and the reason that God says grace is freedom for us, it's because we don't have to carry that. And I was over here hurt, angry, feeling no justice, no fairness. I was thinking, I don't deserve this crap. I couldn't believe someone would do this to me, which was valid and completely okay. So hear that. But I realized there was a much healthier way to end that process. And once I realized that slight but very important shift in perspective on grace and forgiveness, it changed everything for me, because I actually started to understand why giving grace is for us to protect our peace. And I'm not saying that we cannot feel all the emotions, because healing is partly that. And God made us with a mind, will, and emotions. He did not make us robots. That means we can be all of them anger being one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Anger is not a sin. What we do with it can take us down a bad road. But he also gave us the grace roadmap to say, when you align a little quicker, you don't get so bitter. You don't add. So it's the same thing. Not only was I taking on the burden, but the repercussions of that are horrible.
Yeah.
So when I take it back to God and I'm honest, like, this is how I'm feeling in my roughest moments. And he reminds me, it's okay. You don't need to twist the plan. So the cheat code is not about giving grace when I feel like it. Give grace when you don't feel like it,
Mm-hmm.
and let God deal with the rest.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, consequences of choices exist, but I realized that I held on, and instead of aligning with the grace that was already given, I was thinking, when they change, maybe. When they're sorry, maybe. And when I feel justified, maybe. And then maybe I'll align. Well, that's not the path. That is a difficult path that added time, heaviness, and a lot of burden to my healing process. And I didn't recognize that then. Okay, so now I'm keeping me here. So it's like,
it's not the other person. It's me.
You did me dirty, and
Yeah.
I'm sitting in it.
Yeah.
I'm sitting in the pig pen. Instead, we don't have to do that. And so I had to take that responsibility, say what I choose keeps me either stuck, distracted, or free and full of peace that passes understanding. And so I'm really grateful for that learning experience.
Totally. The aha moment. I love what you said about aligning with it. It really does pivot and it makes a difference. So after your aha moment and after you realize, okay, I have to align, could you share a personal experience that has challenged you to practice grace for yourself and grace for others?
Yes. So I mentioned my friend that helped me, and we both went through
Is this Doug?
Doug.
Okay.
It was my first divorce. And at that time, I realized how hard I was being on myself, but that ties into also giving grace to others. Because this was a process my family went through also. And that was tricky because, as I mentioned in the condemnation series, I felt a huge burden about the pain divorce causes to all of us. But when I aligned with grace more, I started to be able to separate things and realize I have a path and so do all of them. So I was able to separate better. Okay, so in my life, how do I need to give myself grace in this situation? As I walk through this tough process, I need to grieve. I need to let my broken heart heal. I need to start over. I need to focus on my health and my faith and all things in between. Also, at the same time, learning I need to give grace to my family through their process that they had to go through on their own time frame. They had to have their own grief, their own healing, their own healthy processes, their own decisions of what needed to be in their journey. I had to align that grace and peace of our time frames might not align. The way they heal, when they heal, what is best for them may not align for what is best for me. And accepting the difficult changes that we wish didn't happen, that is also where I had to give a lot of grace to myself and them.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes it's just hard to accept the change at all. And so my prayer is still God heal us all. But I had to learn I might be healthy first. Or maybe some of them got to places of peace way before I did, and I didn't recognize that until later. So giving grace to make space that for the different places along our paths was really key for me, and that we can't expect everyone to reach the same growth at the same time. Another aha that I had on my grace journey with divorce and family is that God is dealing and working things out in each of us that need refining through hardship, through this tough situation. It brings out the things in you that then need behaviors changed or decisions changed. And sometimes when things are said and done, when it's raw and fresh, it's painful. And nobody's at their best when they're in a really tough situation.
Mm-hmm.
So back then, I remember feeling misunderstood, maybe unsupported at times and different times, you know? And I remember now, oh, okay, grace for that, because we were all on that path. And all the while, life is still happening in all the other ways. Kids, life, work, and this. So, you know, it's not easy. So we need to give a lot of grace for that. And I had to practice that. I was navigating also, how do I give grace to someone who hurt me in the deepest ways? So for me, that was my husband at the time. It might have been easier now that I look at it from their perspective, easier down the road, that they could give him grace easier because it was their brother. Whereas for me, it was so painful because that connection as a husband, wife is very different bond and connection than a brother. Even though they're both deep, they're different. They're very different. And it took me a while, honestly, to give grace back for feeling like I didn't get support in my sadness. It felt like it was easier for some to just kind of brush through it and move on. But for me, it was a tough transition. And so I also learned that sometimes unrealistic expectations arise and it's unintentional. And it leads me back to grace because really all we all wanted was for everyone to be okay. We all just wish this didn't happen, and we all wish that we were all okay. So we're all hoping and praying and wanting the same things, but because we're on this messy, everybody's affected differently, it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to give grace for that. And however, the recipe allows our emotional capacity for grace to ourselves and others to grow in understanding and knowledge. It's like all these years down the road, now you see it different, and doesn't make it any easier when you went through it. But if I knew these things and could practice them more, so maybe it will help some listeners in the thick of it or heal quicker, you know? And so I like to think that some of this is why we're doing this, and that what took us a little longer can help people quicker. So I've gotten it wrong. Would love to pay it forward and
save money on therapy.
Yeah. And say that when grief strikes, I hope that you maybe remember some of these tools in your life as well.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
I love hearing all these things. Like, so little update, everyone. I learned so much about Stacey through this podcast. So
Yes.
I love when we get to do these question answer interview type things, because then I learned so much. And so anyways, I'm just so thankful for you.
Same.
Okay. So you said you've gotten it wrong in the past.
Yep.
So was there ever a moment or like a vulnerable experience where you knew you needed to forgive them, but you chose not to?
Oh, you know there was. This is the juicy part. So that second guy, if you haven't listened, you got to go back and listen to my story. And there was a second guy I dated after my first divorce, and he was the first person I trusted. It was the first person that I thought, you know, wow, there's hope. I can move forward. And he planned to harm me the entire time. And that's why this one hit different. Like my divorce was so hard. But there was addiction, and there was things, and there was stuff involved that you sort of are like, this is horrible. And I can't believe you did that. I can't believe you lied to me. And there's issues, right? Clearly this guy had issues too. But he literally, from the moment our paths crossed, he planned it. He planned to harm me. And at that, this was, to answer your question, this was me. No. And I did say this to him, but in my mind, in my heart, I was saying, you are literally evil.
Mm-hmm.
I do not forgive you. I do not give you grace. I never will. I hope you get tenfold everything you did to me and more. Yeah. I would love it if you vanished. And quite frankly, I could care less if you end up in hell, and I hope you do. And I know that some of you might be right now gasping and going, oh, I cannot believe you just said that. But it's true. That is how I felt back then. And,
Oh, yeah.
And unless you have experienced that feeling, then you never have had to feel, if you would feel like that against someone and have to deal with it and then work on it. So let me fast forward by saying, yeah, that is how I felt. And
I felt that way too. So like no judgment, right? My first
Yeah.
husband, exact same way. So I'm with you.
Well, grace for that.
Yes.
Because, I look at it and I don't want to be that type of person, and I wouldn't describe myself as that type of person. However, I'm telling you an honest time where if all of those things I just said happened, I would be like, well, sorry for your luck, and not feel bad. I was justifying my pain. I was really just disgusted by it. And I was thinking, I was literally okay with saying who went to heaven or hell in Stacey's world. So it's a good thing I'm not God. And it's a good thing none of us are, because if it was up to me, I would have categories and I'd be like, grace wouldn't exist for some people. It would be black and white, very little gray. And it would be, oh, no, I am not patient with evil people and genuinely intentional mean people. Nope. I'd be like, whoop, bye-bye, hell for you. And it would also be justified in my mind to say, you can't hurt anybody else.
Right.
It would be out to look out for people, because that's what rises up against me. It's like, I can't believe you did that to me. But I do not want you to be able to do this to anyone else. So that's where it came from, but it's a good thing I'm not God. And let me be clear about something. The Bible is clear, though, when I joke about heaven and hell, that we do need to make a decision. This grace is for everyone, but it is with the freedom to choose. And we do have to choose. So I don't want any confusion to be in what we're talking about. It is offered to everyone. You do have to accept it. And it opens up a whole slew of beautiful things in our lives. So I hope that if you haven't, that you please consider accepting that and asking Jesus in your heart. So I want to follow that by, I do not feel this way anymore about this person. Even him, now I can see how much turmoil he had to be in, and maybe still is. Now I can honestly say that I just hope for all the ones who caused pain like that to me, I really hope they turn to the path of grace themselves, because that would do everything I hoped for. It would stop the madness in their lives, and it would stop them from doing this to other people in this life. And if they ever hear this, I hope they know I do forgive them, and I aligned with what God already did a long time ago. So it also just, I hope they hear it to know that they don't have any power over me anymore. I mean, just because sometimes rehashing the stories and digging up the old stuff is hard. I mean, we are human, but that it doesn't have any power over me anymore of those things. So I'm like, praise God.
That's so good.
I
love that.
That was a journey, but I did feel justified at first. But the repercussions were not worth it. It ate at me. In that time that I felt that way and that hateful, it ate at me. I didn't like who I was being, and I didn't like feeling like that. I didn't like that it consumed my thoughts. It changed a little bit of how soft my heart was at the time, and I didn't like that. Now, my anger was okay. Just like I said before, anger is not a sin, because what he did to me was extremely wrong, and it was extremely abusive. So I am not saying to anyone out there, someone's treating you horribly, that you should just accept it and give grace and forgiveness. I'm saying if I would have stayed there in my heart and let it continue to harden my heart, it could have manifested into really, really bad things that I then have to be accountable for in choosing that in my life. As I was honest to God, it helped me move from loathe. Not hate, just loathe. Mama says never hate.
I'll loathe you instead.
I'll loathe. and anger, pain, resentment, to remember that even this guy and the other ones in my life, they're offered the same opportunity of grace and being forgiven if they decide to turn from their wicked ways with a truthful heart. Then that's it. They can transform too. And I hope they do. I hope they did. I never lost my belief at the time or now that people can change. I lost my will to hope that he would. At the time, I was like, oh, I know you could. I hope you don't. So we've come a long way. At first, like I said, I just wanted the madness to stop, and I felt so out of control, meaning he got me in such a way that I didn't see coming, that I just wanted to protect somebody else. And so that's really where it came from. But I channeled it in a way that wasn't the most caring. So happy I got rid of that. But also this process is why I now have the strength to talk about these things and to speak up. And this is one of the things that I've really thought a lot about, because it's not the easiest to speak about these things, knowing that what I just said, it affects people I love the dearest in my life. I'm realizing more every time we do a podcast together that this is more and more and more of my freedom unlocked. I'm feeling it more in real time. I just want to share that.
Yeah.
I am feeling it more in real time because me speaking up has freed me from this having power.
Yeah.
And it also, I don't love my nieces and nephews or want to harm them or my family or former family in any way by speaking about these things. I just want a perspective to be given and say, the reason I'm speaking up is because I feel there's so many other people that need these nuggets to look for the red flags, to get away from predators, because they now know the signs and can listen and be like, wow, I recognize that in my relationship or this person or someone I'm dating, and maybe they can get away from them before it starts to get really, really bad, like you and I found ourselves in. And so this is never coming from a place of digging anyone or outing someone else. It's coming from a place of there's other people other than us that need it. There's other people who are actually in a living hell and they need help getting out of it, and they need grace, but sometimes it's that serious. So that is why this has just been amazing. And now I'm so proud that I can genuinely say, now I pray for these people. Now I pray, and this is why I understand. That's why the Bible says pray for our enemies, so that they don't get what they deserve. They don't get what they don't deserve. Excuse me. There we go. They don't get what they don't deserve. Because if they follow that path, if they don't reconcile with the Lord, I'm not saying me, because here's the other thing I learned. It's not up to me to care. I mean, I do hope, but it's not my responsibility, just like forgiveness. They are on their own path. Everything they choose, everything they do is between them and the good Lord. And everything I do and everything I say, that's why I said, if I would have stayed in that hateful place, I am now responsible for choosing that, because that is not showing or shining God's love. And so that would have been a bad choice. But this is our path to freedom. And my hope is that God will maybe work through our podcast and us in our hearts and show others how we can look a little bit more like love and give a path to people who maybe feel that right now. Because the truth is, even I felt that much anger and sadness and hope, like hate for someone briefly. And so I know there's other people out there. And so my hope is, please don't get stuck there. Please know that it's only hurting you, and it's only giving those people power over you, and you don't have to stay there. And we're on the other side of it now, showing that it can actually change and transform your heart. It changed mine. So, that was the juicy.
So good. That was the juicy. Okay, so then what are some practical steps and just some habits that you can suggest to our listeners now that you know how to put grace in action?
Okay, well, my little tidbits. Keep a few close friends. You don't need a whole slew. You need a few lifers, ride or diers. And you might not have known them since you were a kid, but you need that type of friend, like I mentioned at the beginning of this episode. Also, when you make a mistake, do your best not to repeat it. So, hello, we're all going to continue to make mistakes even when we do our best not to. So, please give ourselves grace for that. Got to realize that this is a journey. My hope is that you can take away that our capacity in grace and forgiveness can grow. So maybe you could take our little line and say, am I being nice to myself? Or maybe you take that to a friend and you say, hey, are you being nice to yourself? And maybe grace can grow in your life. Remember that God can change hearts, anyone's heart. So pray for people who have hurt you. Pray for situations you think are impossible. Keep leaning in, because that is God keeping your heart soft. And when you get hit with the lies of condemnation, which the enemy will still try to do, maybe try to choose a word that God is. Lean in. Find one. Love, compassion, forgiveness, kindness, mercy, joy, patience, and hold on to one of them, because it's all wrapped up for you, and that is grace. Remember, you don't have to do anything to receive this. It's just love. And I will end on this. John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever would believe in him will have eternal life. And that is grace.
So good. All right, listeners. Well, thank you, Stacey, so much for sharing the application. And listeners, we invite you to DM us if you relate, or also just if you have a prayer request, send us your requests, or even a praise report, because we want to celebrate with you. And that wraps us up for this week's episode.
Yes, and this will be our lead-in to our next episode, which you will hear Sarah's real-life application about grace to herself and to others. So with that, this is O.P.O.P, the podcast, Operation Protect Our Peace, with Stacey and Sarah.
Hey, Joy Stealers.
We're coming for you.